All right, let's kick off with the fourth of our series of presentations today, International Standards for Business Continuity. Why should I care? Where do I start with this one? Oh, big picture, the world is far more BC aware today than it was 10 years ago. We have a variety of drivers like regulatory pressures, just-in-time processing, natural disasters, cybersecurity, health threats, and of course, COVID-19. And for the inexperienced, the pressure results in implementing business continuity through intuition. And for others, they seek more depth to existing references and materials. And this has resulted in an explosion of effort in developing standards and guidance documents. And today, I want to help you better understand standards and why you should care. For those who don't know me, I'm Saul, hello. I am an honorary member of the Business Continuity, an honorary fellow member of the Business Continuity. In fact, I'm coming up to 30-year anniversary in doing business continuity. And way back then when I started, there were no standards, there were no guidelines, there were no handbooks. And so I absolutely have seen an incredible evolution in this management discipline. I'm also a member on the Standards Australia Technical Committee, and as part of today, talk more deeply about the international standards. Project-wise, I've, as I said, been doing business continuity for about 30 years. I've run projects overseas in exotic places like Kenya and Laos and China and Fiji and more traditional places as well. I lead the business continuity and resilience practice here, but we work very much as a close-knit team, the four of us, and hopefully you've seen how we've all performed today and you've been able to take some value out of all that. I have a simple belief about business continuity, and that is business continuity is not as difficult as most people think. They just need a small push in the right direction and some support along the way. And that's what we find we end up doing. We provide that gentle push in the right direction, and we provide support as they start to learn and progress their BC projects. But a good place to start is, where do you go to when you need to really understand what this is about? What are the methodologies? When BC is new, it's hard to know where to find that right guidance. And unfortunately, some people just make it up under the guise of intuition, or they get directed by a risk management philosophy. And I think, as you'll see here up on the screen, a lot of conversations end up like this, right? I do it the best way, trust me, I'm a consultant. No, I'm the risk expert, trust me, and so on. I know it's a bit strange coming from me as a consultant, it is a challenge for new people. And I think that's one of the benefits of Business Continuity and Awareness Week, that you can get some ideas and greater understanding, and then hopefully find new contacts to make to help you move forward. Out of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people there, the one that gives me the greatest grief is lady number 2. I think you can see my mouse here, the risk expert. And the reason for that is the risk management philosophy is very different from business continuity, and we'll hopefully give you a sense of what that is today. And this last lady down here, in 1 minute, I'll have a new idea and it'll be better. So please try and stay away from those people. And there's no need to engage. Individual people have their own ideas about doing business continuity. So the question is, where should you get methodology from, or business continuity? My view, global thought leadership, and for me, I guess because it's so obvious in my life, the international standards is the place to go to, and today is very much about understanding that. So consider ISO as your go-to for global thought leadership, and I think it's important for you to understand a little background to the international standards. So, okay, who did that? Very funny. Yes, I love standards. Ha ha ha. I'm not sure why somebody put that in. Let me just move on beyond that. Sorry, someone's having a bit of fun. A bit of history about ISO. Let me not get distracted here. ISO was established in 1946 in London, but now it's headquartered in Geneva. It's an independent, non-government international organisation with membership of 165 national standards bodies. ISO brings together experts from all these countries to share knowledge and to develop voluntary, consensus-based, market-relevant international standards that support innovation and provide solutions to global challenges. And there's some really important elements for you to take away out of that. Okay, so it's voluntary. All the time that I put into standards is all voluntary. I don't get paid, and everyone who contributes to this are in the same boat. Consensus base is really important, so no one rides roughshod over anybody else. We all have a conversation. We talk through the merits of an idea or an issue or a concern, and then we take consensus on how to resolve it and how to move forward. Not everybody is 100% happy, but by and large, the bulk of people are happy. And I think that's a very good way of moving forward. All ISO standards undergo a systematic review every 5 years. So that goes to the relevance of standards that we produce. And all technical specifications are reviewed every 3 years. And I'll talk about the difference between a standard and a tech spec in a few minutes. So I'd just like you to take some comfort that it's not a commercial venture. So yes, they do sell standards through various channels, and that's to fund the administrative side of ISO. But the bulk of the people involved at ISO are volunteers like me. We do not get paid. It's purely for the, the love of contributing to the community. Now, as you might imagine, the landscape of standards is very broad, not can't be done under one single structure. And so ISO has 250 technical committees focused on everything from glass manufacturing to fine bubble technology. And believe me, there is a thing called fine bubble technology. And of course, a range of management systems like risk management and of course, business continuity and resilience. Now, I'm a member of TC 292. It's one of the larger technical committees, and it continues to grow each year as we seem to find new opportunities and new reasons for creating new standards. Now, just a touch point from a question that was asked earlier today about ITDR. There is another technical committee that I'm also a member of called SE27, which is charged with the responsibility of creating a standard called 27031, which is all about ITDR and ITDR readiness. So I'm not sure if I'll have a chance to talk about that in my presentation. Maybe I can just talk quickly about it when we come together after my session as the group. Let me come back to 292. So I play in 292. We specialize in the area of security to enhance the safety and resilience of society. At the moment, we have 50 countries that are active participants in the work we do. We've published 41 standards to date, and you may be surprised to know that there are 23 that are currently under development, which makes life a bit of a challenge at times when we have to overlay our standards work with my normal day-to-day work. And like ISO itself, there is so much work to be done. We've also had to segment our technical committee into different groups. So at the top there, you can see we're led by a secretariat. There is a communications group. We have a website that you can go to. If you do a search on ISO TC 292, you'll find our website. We have a hook out to developing countries. We have a hook out to the United Nations. And within our own space, we have 9 working groups, and each of those working groups focus specifically on a particular aspect of societal security. As much as I'd like to play or participate and contribute in all these sectors, A, I don't have technical expertise in some of these, and B, I actually don't have the capacity either. But let me just give you a bit of an overview of the key working groups that I do participate and contribute to. The first one is terminology. I think that's really important to make sure that we are all, as a community, singing from the same hymn book when we use terms. So, for example, if you're using MAO within your BC framework, I would direct you to the terminology and advise you that we don't use MAO anymore in 22301, the BC standard. We use MTPD. There is a way that you can access terminology without cost. If you go to your search engine, Google, Safari, whatever, and you key in ISO, so ISO and OBP, online browsing platform, you will find the link that will take you to the online browsing platform. There's a radio button where you can click on terms and definitions, key in any term you want, and you'll see the definitions come back. It's a great facility, a great service. The remaining groups, group 2, continuity and organisation resilience, that's the main place that I play in. And you'll see some recognisable standards there. The key one, of course, is ISO 22301 Business Continuity Management Systems Requirements Document. You'll see I've also marked the difference between a standard and a technical specification. I'll talk about that more in a moment. You'll see Working Group 3 there, Emergency Management, Working Group 5, Community Resilience, and Working Group 9, Crisis Management. So what you see there is not the entire list of all the standards that we have, just the ones that I have an interest or an involvement in at the moment. And in terms of which ones of those are currently going through change, there's the indication there. And there is a lot of work going on. And just a little bit of a highlight there, ISO 22318, that is going through change. I would love to be involved in that. I just don't have the capacity. But as you may have heard earlier today from Juliet Viney, Juliet's actually a member of that working group, that project team that's looking at the revision of supply chain continuity. And we've had some conversations and some really interesting and somewhat amazing conversations going on there about bringing this standard up to, you know, a current point of view. What else can I highlight to you? I'll just leave it up for a moment. A new area is Working Group 9 Crisis Management. These two new standards are currently under development. They don't pre-exist. Some really good content that's coming about through the various countries who are contributing around this. My personal feeling about all this is that we still have a long way to go to provide some deep clarity around certain principles, some constructs here. So I know that you are familiar with terms like crisis management team, emergency management team, incident management team, business continuity management team, and so on. We all have our own beliefs of what that means and how they work together, but I don't think there's still yet enough depth around that from an ISO, from a global, you know, position perspective. And we need to continue to do some more work on that area. And just as an example, you'll see that there is a reference as 22320 guidelines for incident management. So that's incident management, but it's found within the emergency management working groups field, which, you know, I can see how that works if you're thinking about incidents that are, you know, emergencies, but what about incidents that are not directly related to an emergency? You know, what's the relationship there? And so work in progress, let me just put it that way. And in fact, that philosophy is what drove the creation of Working Group 9 about a year and a half or so, to just enclave out crisis management and make it independent, you know what I mean, so that we can then apply crisis management concepts and principles and frameworks, regardless of whether we're tying it specifically to an incident, an emergency, or a disruption. I think part of the challenge in trying to get your head around standards is the numbers. Now, I talk numbers. I apologize if I do talk numbers at you. It's just the way it sits in my brain. But as you start to, you know, learn and understand and leverage off these, you know, you'll get to know the numbers as well. But I find that people who are new to standards look at these documents as, in some ways, independent standards, but grouped by a theme, as you can see there. But there's more to this than what meets the eye. So let me just give you a bit more depth around the structure or the relationship between standards. We'll start with 22301, which is that fundamental standard that you all know and love. It's called the requirements document. It's called a requirements document. It's the document that you need to comply with or show evidence for if you want your organization to be certified to the international standard. It's a document that's around 20 pages, and it's very much about telling you what you need to do for certification, but not how to do it. So it's very high level. For example, if I just focus on the BIA, within 22301, it does talk about BIA, of course, it's something that you have to do, but it's described in 16 lines of text. Now, clearly, you can't take 16 lines and from that work out how to run a BIA workshop. And so what we then did, we said, well, we need to provide people a bit more depth. How do you implement 22301? So we created another document called 22313, and its title is The Guidance on Implementing 22301. And so they're kind of like a companion document. I would always advise people that if you're going to go down the 22301 path, which you should, then absolutely get your hands on 313 as well. And by example, we go from 16 lines of information to 3 pages, so a lot more meat on the bone. The document itself is 54 pages, so it's 2.5 times bigger if you want to go by paperweight. So clearly there's a lot more information and depth. But then what happened, I don't know, a few years ago, 5 years ago, we looked at it and we said, you know what, we still want to give people even more depth to understand how do you actually do these things and how you might implement it within your organization. So the third layer, which is in some ways a bit of a gray area for most people, is to know that there are technical specifications that you can also purchase or have access to. Specifically, you can see 22317 BIA. It's a 41-page document. So we go from 16 lines to 3 pages to 41 pages. Well, it's 41 pages as at yesterday morning. We're actually 2 meetings away from finalising the committee draft of the revision of 22317. And it's really exciting material because in this document, the BIA, which we've rewritten, you'll find lots and lots of examples of things. You know, what does an impact type table look like? How do I use it? Give me some examples of forms that I can fill out. What does this mean? It's really it's kind of like a how-to guide, right, on how to do BIA. And you can see some of the sister TSs there as well about supply chain, and that's the one that Juliet's working on. People aspect, strategies and solutions, and plans and procedures is a new one, which we finished only a few months ago, going through the process for publication at the moment. I'll have an update on that in the next few months or so. So hopefully you now get a better understanding on how these documents relate. What I'd like to do is now just do a bit of a drill down on 22301 for those who kind of know it exists, but not really sure, you know, what does it mean? What is it all about? When most people think about business continuity, they think about business continuity, as I've just said, business continuity. They don't realize or understand that 22301 is a business continuity management system. So there's 2 components. There's a business continuity focus and there's a management system focus. And on the screen now, you can see the management system focus, which is all about ensuring that you have a structured process to implement, maintain, and improve business continuity. And some of the elements that you find in these sections, we already talked about or touched upon in the presentations of today. Things like leadership, things like setting up resources, making sure you're clear about your objectives, and very much core to setting up a management system for business continuity. So section 4, or clause 4, is about setting the context, understanding the world that you live in and setting the scope. Section 5, clause 5, is about leadership, really key. I know I'm stating the obvious, without leadership, your program of work won't go very far. Planning, understanding what your objectives are and how you're going to do that over time, over a program of work. Identifying the right resources, not just within the program, but all those people that you want to involve. You know, both Brian and Juliet, and to some extent Phil, talked about having to meet people, discuss people. Well, those people have a day job to do. So we need to set priority, we need to identify the targets, we need to make sure that we can have access to those people and bring them on the journey. Clause 8, operations, I'll talk about that in a moment, but that's actually the core element about doing BC. And then we've got clauses 9 and 10, which is about making sure that we're meeting our objectives and implementing corrective actions. In other words, looking for opportunities to improve our BC process. Now, clause 8, operations. And this is the area, as I mentioned a moment ago, where most people just think BC is all about. They think 22301, it's just about this, you know, why do I need a standard? Business continuity, the objective here is to deliver validated continuity and recovery capabilities underpinned by teams of competent people, following plans containing structured or instructional procedures. And you can see the key stages there, doing BIA and risk assessment, strategies and solutions, creating plans and procedures, running some exercises to prove all that works, and then going through the cycle again. The challenge, though, is that if you just focus on that life cycle on the right-hand side, you kind of run out of steam about a year or maybe 2 years later. And that's because you're not including, you don't have the focus of the stuff on the left-hand side, getting leadership commitment. For us as consultants, in just about every case that I can think of, just about every case, that allows us to be presented to the top leadership of an organization to reaffirm the importance of business continuity and how it protects the enterprise, and to make sure that everyone's clear about needing to set some level of priority to ensure that this program not just supports a project that you engage consultants for, that a program of work that lives on, on an ongoing basis forever, to continue to protect the organization and improve its resilience. Just a quick side, some people say, why have you started at clause 4? Isn't there anything before that? Yes, there are. Clause 1 is the scope of the standard. Clause 2 talks about normative references, just to indicate where some of the core references come from within the standards world. Clause 3 is called terms and definitions. And in 22301, you'll see a subset of terms and definitions of all the terms that we use within BC. And just a touch point on that, the ones that you find in the current version of 22301 are the definitions that we changed as part of the systematic review we completed 2 years ago. We felt that, times have changed, thinking has changed, the way we do things have changed, the way we interpret things within the BC space have changed. There was a need to change or to update some of the terms, and we felt it was important to include them specifically in the document itself. And of course, you'll find those terms under ISO 22300, which is that terminology document. So hopefully that now gives you a better sense of what 22301 is all about, right? It's not just about business continuity, it's a management system, and it's got some structures that need to be followed. And again, this is the standard that you would need to show evidence if you wanted to be certified to the standard. A good question that often comes up with people that we meet, not just me, but the BC&R team at Terra Firma, about standards. Well, do I really, who's using it? Is it that mature? All those sort of questions. So let me present this information to you, and hopefully that'll give you a stronger position about 22301. Just a couple of months ago, the BCI and the British Standards Institute released the latest version of the BCI Horizon Scan report. It's a fantastic document. If you register yourself to the BCI website, you can have access to the report. It's a report that comes out yearly. They survey, in this case, in the recent one, 365 companies from 59 countries across 21 sectors. They ask them a whole range of questions about their concerns, their business continuity program, budgetary allocation, skill sets, all those sort of things. And one of the questions they ask is, do you use 22301? And here are the results of that question. And you'll see on the left-hand side that nearly 2/3, so 65% of companies use 22301. And you can also see here, in terms of the don't use, 6.4 said, well, they don't use, but they're going to head towards that in 2021. Now, the question was asked in 2020, and then the report was compiled in early 2021. So I'm assuming that in this year, we're going to see a migration of people moving away from their intuitive-based business continuity methodologies across to a more structured and defensible methodology that we find in 22301. What does that mean? So that basically says that at the moment, based on this survey, 70% of organisations surveyed globally have 22301 in their corporate lives. And you'll also see on the right-hand side there's the top 10 other standards that these organisations use. So again, it's not just about 22301 under the ISO banner. ISO provides you a wealth of reference material that will add real value to your organisation. I'll just give you a moment to have a look at those. I think some of those you'll already know, such as 31,000 risk management. And in fact, not all of them are ISO. So you'll see there's the NFPA, which is out of the US. The bottom one, number 10, BS 65,000, is a British standard on organisation resilience. And of course, there are lots of other references you can go to. In the BCI world, of course, we've got the Good Practice Guide. And just a quick touch point on that, the Good Practice Guide is soon to go through its next revision from the 2018 version. What we did in the last couple of months or so is we've done an addendum that talks about what the differences are between the latest version of 22301 and the Good Practice Guide. All right, let's finish this up. Just a touch point on Australia. Our national standards body is Standards Australia. There is a policy to adopt international standards. My role with Standards Australia is to make recommendations for adoption. And what I did is I recommended the identical adoption. So there's no change. The AS ISO is exactly the same as the ISO version. The date might be a little bit different because of paperwork timing, but it's the same. And my intention over the next 12 months is, as the TSs become revised and published at ISO level, we will also adopt them in Australia as well, as in identical adoption. So I think depending on your market sector, that your organisation operates in, you are likely to have a regulatory body. I recommend that you check with them to confirm what their policy is for you. For example, within Australia, the Australian government has a policy for ISO alignment, so not certification, but alignment. And certainly in Victoria, we've got the Department of Treasury and Finance under their Standing Instruction 3.7 requires consistency with AS ISO 22301 2020. And that's relatively new. That came out in the last month or so. I know some of you may still be using AS 5050 as your guiding principles. Can I highlight to you that it is not a BC standard? In fact, the standard 5050 actually has no reference to business continuity in it at all. It's an interim standard, and in about 12 months from now, they're going to review whether they will keep it or retire it. All right, so let me finish. Here endeth the lesson. My message to you is, please don't reinvent the wheel if you're new to BC. Please don't rely on your intuition. Please don't listen to a consultant that says to you, yeah, well, your organisation is different, or you're too big, or you're too small for standards. Please don't listen to that. Please lean on hundreds of experts from around the world, especially here at Terra Firma, who can help you. If you need help with standards, if you need help with understanding what it all means and how it all comes together, please give us a call. So here's my question: do you care? Well, I hope so. Oh, excellent, you do care. I want you to shout out to your leadership team over the rest of this week. That's what BCAW is about. And introduce the concept of ISO to them. And as I said, if you need help, give us a call. All right, I know I rushed through that quite quickly. I just wanted to give you a sense of what ISO is all about and the substance behind it. I think what I might do now, how are we going for time? Oh, easy. Let's open up to the panel. So if I can kindly ask the rest of my colleagues to turn their video on and turn their mics on.
So we've got a couple of questions actually from the session.
Oh, okay. I can't see the question. Do you want to read it out for me, Phil?
Yeah. So the first one is, why is it that so many companies don't go for 22301 certification?
I think it's a maturity thing. And my advice would be take it in steps. Organizations in market sectors use certification differently. If you were in manufacturing and you wanted to have, you know, that extra accolade to say, really buy our product from us because we're certified to all these standards, I think there's a marketing benefit there. From government, I think they should be certified because I think the community would like to know that you actually do practice what you preach and you've been independently assessed. But I think it's a maturity thing. At the moment, it's great that, government in Australia say you must align to the standard. I'd like to think in a couple of years, they will change that position and say, now we want you to be certified. I don't know what the time frame will be, but for me, I think it's a maturity thing.
Okay. So the second one I've already answered, but you might want to add some colour to it. The question was, in my organisation, there is a belief that BC and organisation resilience are a function together. I struggle with this as I see organisation resilience is the outcome of many functions, not just BC.
Oh, I totally agree. Totally agree with you. I kind of see it as like an umbrella across a wide variety of different disciplines that need to come together. We talked about the notion of silos before. Brian talked about that. Juliette talked about that. Resilience does cover, and anyone who's just simply had their title changed from BC manager to resilience manager, that's alarm bells for us, in our practice. Wow, that's a whole topic in its own right. Maybe that can be the foundation of our next webinar later on in the year. But yeah, and I would agree with you. It is way broader than that.
Roger Duve has asked whether we can download the BCI GPG, and I know the answer to that is yes, but you have to be a member of the BCI. And the final question is, can we share the websites provided as a follow-up?
As in our website?
The websites that we've mentioned.
Yeah, you mentioned some, Saul, at the beginning of your presentation that people could refer to for more information.
Oh, yes. Sorry, my mistake.
Came up just after that. So
Yeah. So if you do a Google search or a Safari search on ISO 22301, you'll hit all the sites where you can acquire or purchase the standard. But if you also do a search on ISO TC 292, you will find a couple of sites, which is the ISO official site. But our own technical committee, we've created our own website where we update it more frequently than what ISO does, and it's managed by our communications group. And then you can see all the project groups, you can see the leadership, you've got contact details if you want to ask people questions, and everybody's more than happy to take questions from the community, because at the end of the day, that's to whom we serve.
Absolutely.